I'm Veronica Sumegi, the publisher and founder of Brandl and Schlesinger, and we've been publishing for 24 years. And we tend to do literary fiction, literary non-fiction, poetry. We publish academic journals such as Southerly, Modern Greek Studies. We do memoirs. We do rather books that are often rejected by the mainstream publishers, and we distribute it through New South Books, Australia-wide. And I also go to Frankfurt Book Fair, and we get a lot of, we haven't had many sales, but we've had quite considerable sales overseas as well.
Great. And how did you first get in the industry, Veronica?
Well, actually, it was my future husband. I met my husband. He was from Hungary, and he used to come to Australia, and then he finally migrated to Australia, and we got married, and he'd been in charge, the publisher, the sort of publisher-in-chief of the first independent Hungarian publishing company in Hungary after the end of communism. And he couldn't speak English. We wanted to do something together, and I'd been teaching at University of New South Wales in General Studies, which got folded for economic reasons. And I've always been passionate about books, and we just thought this was something we could do together, and we're still, 24 years later, still working together. So he does all the layout and production, and I do all the editorial and marketing rights. So we have totally different jobs, but we're managing to do it together still.
Yeah, wow, and for 24 years as well. So 24 years later, what's your day-to-day job like?
Well, it varies every day, which is why I love it, really, because there's not... And I think a lot of women get into publishing because you multitask, which men aren't so good at. But, I mean, you're going... I mean, sometimes it's frantic because you're dealing with one book, then you're dealing with something else that's happening, and then something else. So each day there's a sort of variety of jobs depending on what's happening at the moment. And that makes it interesting. Also somewhat stressful because you're balancing things. So you've got to keep in your mind what you're doing, what you have to do. And it's sort of quite a nice, it's a nice activity. And then, so, I mean, it depends what the deadlines are and what we're releasing and the publicity we're doing and what the author wants. And someone rings you up and then you've got to deal with all these different things. So no day is the same, and sometimes if I'm lucky I can focus on one activity for a couple of hours, but often there's more than one thing to do in a day.
Yeah, doing your multitasking. Yes. And do you have any advice for up-and-coming authors or editors trying to get in the industry?
To get into the industry? Obviously not to write or anything.
Well, yeah.
Well, to write, I think my main, I suppose, advice for any would-be writer or editor is to read. I have a great belief in that you can't write unless you read, and I always have I think you should do a literature course as a basis. I mean, we tend to, I suppose, only because of what we publish, most of our authors have done a university degree, and I think it's the same with publishing, that you need a diversity of interests of what you're doing, and I think as a basis for any publisher is really having a good literary I mean, I can only speak from my background, and obviously big publishers have marketing departments and all sorts of departments, so I'm only speaking from a literary publisher perspective and not from a big publisher perspective where you could get into from sales or promotion or marketing. But from my perspective, I think anyone who wants to go into literary publishing, I think the important thing is to read, have a good literary background, read widely, and understand the industry, because I think that's important. It's like an industry, no matter what job you're doing. Have background and go to bookshops, understand what publishers are doing, all the different publishers, and sort of do some research about who's doing what and what people are doing, and really look at it seriously. Like I have to know everything I can about publishing, and I'm surprised. I'm flabbergasted. Sometimes an author rings up and they say, "Do you print as well?" They don't even have that much. They don't even know the difference between a publisher and a printer, and it's quite, or they don't read because they say, "I don't want to be influenced." So I mean, you just feel it's an important. People have to know their industry and understand who does what. I think if they want to get into publishing, there are courses like RMIT, although I don't think that's really essential. But so I mean, a big broad background is always good. If you can get a part-time job in a bookshop is always good, because then you understand it from the grassroots level, and the publisher appreciates that really from ground up, what's happening in publishing, and so that's always, I think, important.